Hi, everyone. So glad that you guys are here. Going to give everybody just a couple more minutes to get in here before we get started, okay? Okay, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to today's webinar, Preparing for Success, Georgia's Procurement Officer Bootcamp. This is Georgia's 2022 Cronin Awards finalist project. Thank you for spending some time with us today. We're glad you're here. This is the fourth webinar in our 2022 Cronin Awards webinar series, but be sure to check out our upcoming and final webinar. On Wednesday, March 1st, join us for a look at contract administration with The Right Step, how Minnesota improves contract compliance. Registration is still open for this webinar. You can visit www.naspo.org to register and look for the webinars tab on the left side of the page. We look forward to seeing you there. At the close of today's presentation, you'll be asked to complete a brief questionnaire. Your feedback is very valuable to us here at NASPO. Today's presentation is good for one contact hour. To get your certificate, simply complete the questionnaire following the presentation. Before we begin, I'd like to take a moment to explain the format of today's webinar. All attendees are muted. You can enter comments and questions in the chat box. And if you would like to ask our presenter a question, you can type it into the Q&A box at the bottom of your window. Questions may be addressed during the presentation or during a Q&A session after the presentation. And now I'm very pleased to present and introduce our speakers today. We're honored to have with us Becky Alexander and Joyce Auld. Becky is the State of Georgia Purchasing Card Program Manager. And in this role, she's responsible for policy training, audits, and contract management for Georgia's government P-card and e-payables programs. Previously, she worked as an audit manager and auditor for the State Purchasing Division, external auditor for the Georgia Department of Transportation, and in her local county school system. She received a BBA in accounting from Clayton State University and a Master of Accountancy from Georgia Southern University. She has over 10 years of state and local government procurement, P-card, and auditing experience. Welcome, Becky. And we also have Joyce Auld, who has worked with several state entities in various procurement roles. She currently works as a senior procurement training manager with the Department of Administrative Services. In July 2016, Joyce obtained the National Certification of Certified Purchasing Public Buyer from the Universal Public Procurement Certification Council. Other certifications held by Joyce include Georgia Procurement Professional Manager and Carl Vinson Institute of Government Primary Government Accounting Series. As a Dean's List recipient at Shorter University, she earned a Bachelor of Science degree in Management in December of 2007. And knowing the value and importance of education, Joyce immediately enrolled in the Master's of Business Administration program with Strayer University, and she completed her MBA in December of 2009. So NASPO is grateful to have both of you here with us. And now I'm going to turn it over to you, Joyce.
So good evening, everyone. We are so glad to have you all join us. And so I am joined by my good co-worker, Becky. We are just excited that you are here with us. So I thought I unmuted myself, but welcome to the webinar. So we are going to get started. So this is who we are, Becky Alexander, and I am Joyce Auld. So Kenzie, thank you for introducing us. Thank you so much. So in 2022, our Governor Kemp, issued a proclamation that said, purchasing has such a tremendous influence on the state's economy through our supply chain management, and we monitor billions and billions of dollars that are purchased for goods and services. But our job is to ensure that those purchases are made competitively, fairly, open and transparent procurement, and that we're getting the best value for every taxpayer in the state of Georgia. So we were excited to get that proclamation from Governor Kemp during the procurement month, which is coming up in March. And so, how do we get started here? So, there was a need for targeted training for our head procurement officials. The state of Georgia has various different certifications programs, which just basically provide a high level overview of the procurement process. But we quickly found out that we needed to have more targeted training for our procurement officers. And so we were experiencing significant turnover, as many of you all probably are as well. We all know that we're going through this great recession. And so the state of Georgia has felt the crunch as well. And so we realized that if we didn't have qualified individuals in those positions, there was a high risk for non-compliance, reducing their purchasing capacity, and failure to meet other critical objectives that they had for their various entity. And so we quickly found out that if we didn't have the right people in those agency procurement officer positions, that a lot of that work was going to fall on the central procurement office to conduct those solicitations for those agencies and those just complex solicitations. So we quickly realized that we needed to do something to stop the bleeding here in the state of Georgia. So what were our objectives? And so because the state of Georgia is a decentralized state, we knew that we wanted to have capable procurement officers and be able to give them the roles and responsibilities so that they could effectively manage their own teams and their own offices. We knew that we wanted to strengthen the communication between them and the central office, as well as, developing a partnership with them. And so one of our other objectives was just how can we share that knowledge across the enterprise and with other key regulatory state entities. So we wanted to facilitate the sharing and networking because we all know, if you have a strong network, there are other people that you can go to and rely on. And so we quickly knew that our veteran procurement officers had a lot of knowledge and experience that they could share with those new procurement officers coming into their positions. And we've all been new to a position at one time or another, right? And that can be a little intimidating or a little scary, right? But having someone that you can call upon, knowing those resources, that helps kind of to ease you into your new position. And so we wanted to retain the talent and not, have all this turnover that was occurring in those procurement officer roles. So we partnered with 9 other external agencies that have things that they are impacting those agencies with. And so these agencies were quick to partner with us. And so each of them presented a session on things that those new procurement officers would encounter in their new positions. And so we're very grateful for all these organizations that have partnered with us and have been willing to share their knowledge and their experience with our attendees within the boot camp. So we set up these various different sessions. And so this is what the schedule looked like for fiscal year 2022. We have pretty much followed this schedule into our 3rd year now of the boot camp. And so we first started off in, I'll let Becky start with what we did the very first session. You're muted, Becky.
Listen, Joyce has been waiting to say that to me for a long time because I'm constantly saying that to Joyce. Joyce, you're muted, and you finally got to say, Becky, you're muted. Thank you. So as Joyce was saying, these are the sessions that we started with the first year, and we've kept them up for the following years. We're in our 3rd year currently. And so when we were setting this up, we were discussing what would be the best format. And what I want you to look at on the screen is all these words. There's a ton of words on there, right? We're about to go into depth into what the content was and to give you kind of a taste for the information that's provided. And one thing that we determined was if we get a group of people, whether we do it virtually or whether we do it in person, and we give them all this information over the course of a 7-day period, we're going to be giving them so much information that they won't retain it and they won't be able to retain it. So what we
Overload.
decided when we set this up was we'll spread it out over the course of a year. That way, when they start, they've got a little bit of knowledge of managing the process because they will have already started managing their procurement office. And then we'll give them a first session, and then we'll let them go back, take that information, start applying it, and then show up for the second session, and then continue that throughout the year, so that by the end of the year, we've given them a toolkit of things that will help them throughout their careers. And we're going to talk in a few minutes about how we got to that and the steps that we took to even get to this curriculum, because that's part of this presentation. Is we wanted you guys to be able to replicate it at your states or your agencies. What I want to do real quick, all right, we're about to blow up NASPO's chat box, okay, which is what I like to do, so they're gonna love this. All right, so I want everybody to go to the chat, and real quick, I want you to tell me if you are with a centralized or decentralized purchasing office. And I'm sorry, let me ask that a different way. Does your state have centralized or decentralized purchasing? So in the state of Georgia, we have decentralized, so that all the agencies do that. SPD, which is the state purchasing division within the Georgia Department of Administrative Services, sets the policy based off of the law that was written. And so we give the guidance and we set the policy and things like that, but the individual agencies do their own purchasing. Oh, good. Okay, so I'm seeing a mixture of some centralized and some decentralized. Very good. Okay. Oh, good. Looks like Karina put in Michigan, and I saw somebody earlier from, I forget what it is, and it's way up the list. It might have been Alaska or Washington, D.C. Everybody, if you'll also put in there, what state are you from? So we can kind of see that as well. I will tell you, I do see some of our friends here in Georgia. I want to give a shout out to Osborne and to Doreen and Tanya. So I'm seeing a few different of our Georgia friends here. Thank y'all for being on. Okay, very good. Seeing a lot of different places. Awesome. Okay, so again, we set the purchasing policies and the procurement manual here. And that's what this first session is all about. It is about what are the different policies, what can they and can't they do, what laws do they need to know about, that as a manager, that you just want to be aware of these things as things come up. And not even just the first session, the whole thing was written around that, because you go from being a buyer or someone who's in that role where you're going through the technical process, or through even a more complex process where if you're in an advanced role of buying and of doing procurements and things like that, and then all of a sudden you're a manager. Well, how do you take all these things and you become a manager of the office? And then also, what's out there that I don't know about? And that's the things that we wanted to put into this. So the first session, and you can see again, it starts in August, just in line with the school system, right? No, I'm just kidding. So anyway, the first session was in August, and it covered things that are, again, the state procurement law and the P card policy. I made some notes. I'm just going to kind of go over my notes. So in the GPM, which is the Georgia Procurement Manual, it has what we've given to the agencies about the procurement process, right? What are the thresholds that require the procurement process, and things like that, and how to get through it. So that first session covers what's in that policy. It also describes the roles and responsibilities for the procurement officer. What's expected of them? What do they have the authority to do? So speaking of authority, what kind of purchasing authority do they have? All right, so how much are they allowed to put out there for the different RFIs, RFCs, RFPs, RFQs, all the RF alphabet? Right? We go ahead and lay that out so that those managers, and again, this is geared towards someone who is new to being in that role. What are the different limitations or the different allowances? We call it a delegated purchasing authority. What are their allowances that they're allowed to do at the different agencies? So how many of you guys have a delegated purchasing authority, a limit that you are allowed to post, or that before you have to request permission from your central or from your state purchasing division, or whatever you guys call it there. How many of you guys have that? You can either raise your hand or you can put it in the chat. Georgia, all your answers are going to be yes to that one, right? Uh,
50K for taxes. Wow. Okay.
well,
Okay.
it's
Yeah,
10,000.
it's down
So
the road, 10. Okay.
yeah, very good. Awesome. All right, so we're seeing some of the different ones at the different states. I'll tell you, with the state of Georgia, we're seeing kind of lenient here. So for RFIs and RFCs, because there's not really a value assigned to those, don't have limits on them. For the RFPs, I believe those are limited. Those start at $1 million. And then the sole source notices, anything over 500,000 has to go through SPD. When I say SPD, I'm talking about our division. That has to go through SPD. And consortia and co-ops, those are going to be equal to the RFP. So there's times when if an agency needs it, we may expand or retract some of their delegated purchasing authority. And that's usually taken into some consideration. Rebecca is on the line with us, and she is actually over that. And so she's told us that it's $1 million for state of Georgia unlimited for RFQ. So thank you, Rebecca. I actually used some of your notes to write this. So she's always very thorough with that, and I'm covering her stuff. So that's good to know she's on the call. And some of the other information provided in that is, when do they need to request permission from SPD? Okay, so as a manager doing that, you want to know, okay, am I allowed to just continue doing these things, or when do I need to reach out to SPD for approval? And then some of the common policy issues that they're seeing. They also cover any different topics in legislative requirements, anything that may be something that they're commonly seeing or something that may be new. Different topics in as far as market research and what is required in the policy, and what needs to happen in that process. And then also preparing different postings for posting, for public notice. All right, so then they also cover the P card policy, and it's along the same lines. They cover the policy, what's required to have a special approval, and then how to designate personnel within your procurement office to be the P card administrator, or to be an approver or a card holder, or things like that. So designating those different positions. Let me ask you guys this: how many of you guys have the P card program as part of your procurement office? If just put it in the chat, just say yes. Okay. Yes or no to the, yep, very good.
Quasi.
In a quasi, that's interesting. All right, so I'm going to pause for just a second because I think Regina has a really good question, and I'm going to go ahead and address it. She's asking if there's any homework or application scenarios associated with each of these sessions. I'll tell you that some of them do and some of them don't. We leave that up to whoever is hosting the session. Do you have anything you want them to do ahead of time? Or do you want to have anything you want for them to take home and or not take home, but do after the session is over? Some of them give them work ahead of time. This one, I believe, this particular session is one that does have some homework, or has a handout that they have, and I think that it actually does work very well when they do have that, but not all of the sessions do. So we leave that up to the presenter if they want to have handouts or homework assigned to it. Good question, Regina. So we've talked about the GPM, and we've talked about the P card, and the P card policy, and the different aspects of the P card program are covered for them. And then one thing that I saw that was in there, and I will tell you that that is part of the previous person who provided this, but I like that it was included in each of the session, was a sheet that of contact information and forms and all of that. That way, when these managers leave, they have information on, they don't have to have memorized it, but they have a tool to be able to, or a reference sheet to be able to go back to, okay, I know I need to do this. Who do I need to reach out to? Or where do I need to find this information? So information on the website, information on where the forums are, or is there something about this, and finding the different policies that are involved. So another part of this first session is the training group. Each of the trainers, from what I saw, and what I have seen, provides a different aspect of the training. That way they meet the people at the agencies, meet the different trainers. They talk about the benefits of being certified, all the different certifications that are offered in the state of Georgia, and the paths and the timelines that are expected for completion of those. They talk about different training requirements, because it may not be a certification path, but some positions that may be in the purchasing role do have required trainings. So they talk about what's required. Then the training system that's out there currently, we use LMS. And so they discuss the system, they discuss our DOAS website and what training tools are located on the website, what is needed for recertification, how to get external credits, and then also some really good resources such as NASBO for providing some good external resources for training. So, and then how to upload those so that they can get their CPEs for recertification for the state of Georgia certifications. So one more area that's covered that day is this, the small and diversely owned businesses outreach. And I think this is a really good topic as well. They talk about some of the initiatives, whether it's a new one or whether it's one that's ongoing, because it may be something that here at SPD we are initiating, or that we are working on here, but it also applies to the different agencies. How can the agencies help, or what can they do on their end in order to help with these small businesses be able to do business with the state of Georgia? They discuss some of the training opportunities that we allow for these suppliers, so that at the agency level, if they need to help these suppliers get in touch, then they know how to do that, and who is over that training program. They also discuss our partners with the supplier support services. There's a couple different agencies that do help with that certification process, or with some of the supplier orientation. And so we discuss those. We also, again, we cover the website for the small businesses. And then also, I believe we talked about that a second ago. So how can the entities help with these small businesses? It's a lot of information, but it's a lot of really good information. And we've just covered the first day. And Joyce, it's your turn to cover the second one.
All right, so as you can see, we hit the ground running with these sessions. But then in the second session, which is scheduled the month thereafter, we want to get into the weeds. We want to get into the nitty gritty. So these procurement professionals may not have had experience conducting complex solicitations, where you have to go out and bid, because in the state of Georgia, anything $25,000 or greater must be competitively bidded out. And so how are they going to go about conducting those complex solicitations? And so we want to give them resources, put them in touch with, what we call our agency sourcing group, if they need help, if it's something new to them, how they need to go about putting together their evaluation committees. All of those things would be covered in how to actually get started in conducting a complex solicitation. And I always cringe when someone talks about technology, because that's outside of my area of expertise, right? Like, I stay in my lane. And so we know that those technology solicitations have the impact of affecting various other parts within your state agency, right? And so we want to put them in touch with other organizations that can help them conduct those technology solicitations, because they are very, very complex. And then finally, how do they go about managing their office? And so as a new manager, you may have staff that are trained or not currently trained that, or maybe some staff that has not been in a procurement role before. And so how are you going to actually manage your procurement staff? I just came back from the State Training Coordinators Conference in San Antonio, and it was interesting to hear how many of the procurement offices or training offices is just one person that's doing all of those duties and responsibilities. And so how do you effectively manage that? And so just as a summary, yeah, how do they go about conducting those complex solicitations? The resources for if they have to do something with technology, and then just how to actually manage their procurement office. Becky, the third session. You're muted again. I got you.
Yes, you did. I'm going to owe Joyce so much money after this. Thank you, Joyce. All right. So the third session is Joyce's favorite topic, which is technology, right? So we partnered with the USG. And so let's take another question to the audience. Who wants to guess what is USG? Give our Georgia people a second to type it out, because I know everybody is. Rebecca says she knows too much.
She knows too much.
That's right.
So we should have told the Georgia employees that they couldn't participate, Becky.
That's true. So USG is the University System of Georgia. So why would we partner with USG? All right, so this is why. In the state of Georgia, data is everywhere, right? We're not all on the same system. All right, so that's my next question, y'all. Put in the chat, are you all on the same system? Is every agency in your state on the same system, or is it all disjointed where some people have, or some agencies have different systems? If you know that. Extremely disjointed. Okay. Oh, Andrew, what state? Maybe need to plan a move here soon.
He's in
Michigan is the
Tennessee.
same.
Okay.
Yeah, very good. All right, so we wanted to, whoever was participating, for them to be able to get information as a manager on what do they need from their system in order to help them better in their role. Okay, so we got our SPDs team of people who run our system, our ERP system for the procurement module, as well as the university systems, because they are on a different system. And we teamed up to provide the training, right? We're going to talk in a few minutes about how we developed this. And probably almost every time we ask the question, what do you want to know? What do you think the next person in your role would want to know? It was always queries. Please tell us some queries and how to use them. What's in the system? Tell us how to use the system to our benefit. Because again, if you go from doing the purchasing and managing those procurements and stuff to all of a sudden managing a team, how are you supposed to pull reports out of the system and able to help you better in your job? So this right here sounds like a very technical piece, but it's something that they were all interested in and something that really they all asked for. So what we do is we give them a lot, first of all, terminology, right? Because IT terminology is the same thing as me sitting here and telling you USG, right? Until we told you that acronym didn't make any sense, right? So we give them the different terminology and how it relates to the system. We tell them how to post in the procurement registry, because I believe, if I'm correct, and I love DOS, but I'm not going to pretend that I know everything about DOS, but I believe that only the procurement officers can post to that. Is that right, Joyce?
That is correct.
Okay. And then our IT team gives them their contact information, how to do things like handling price discrepancies in the catalog. They go over the website tools that are out there. There's different metrics. So they discuss things like where the metrics are and how to interpret them, things like that. How to get into and use the e-procurement system. There's several different quick reference guides that are out there and available. So we explain where they are, how to get to them, how to apply them to their staff in case they have, let's say they have a new team member and they need to show them how to do that. Not only does it help the manager, but it helps them to be able to pass that along information as well. And then the one that we talked about earlier, the queries. What kind of queries are in the system? What can that, how to run them, things to put into the system to pull out useful information, and then how to apply them to their job. Not just how do I run a query, but how do I apply it to what I'm doing? So Joyce, I believe I have covered day 3. You are on to day 4.
Okay, so day 4, we're into the 4th month. And so here we brought in, and I'm not going to test you on all these various different acronyms as Becky does, but OIG is the Office of Inspector General. And so that person in that role has a responsibility to make sure that we are protecting your taxpayer dollars in the state of Georgia, right? And so we talk about in this session, what is fraud? Why does fraud happen? And some things to be on the lookout for that, a new procurement officer may not be aware of. You may come in green, naive, thinking everybody is honest. And most people are, for the most part, that we can say, right? But we want to give them information and share with them some case studies of, various different fraudulent activities that have happened in the state of Georgia and probably nationwide as well, right? And so that's a very informative session, just to alert them of potential things that they need to be on the lookout. Becky's talked a lot about the various different systems that we use. And so how can they pull those internal reports, their financial reports? How much are you spending on a particular product or service? Do you need to establish a contract for that item? And so there's those internal reports that they can actually pull out through those queries are also good. Georgia has a Transparency Act. And so as a trainer for the state of Georgia, I always tell my students, we work inside of glass buildings. Therefore, we have to be very, very transparent. And so if someone files an open records request, we have to make those documents available to them. And so what is actually covered in the Georgia Transparency Act? And then E-Verify. E-Verify, I believe, went into effect July of 2012, if I'm correct. And so that law essentially says, if we're going to hire any suppliers to perform a service in the state of Georgia that's valued at $2,500 or greater, that supplier must verify that they are not using any illegal immigrants. If they're going to hire subcontractors to help them perform that work on state property, they also must verify that they're not using illegal immigrants. And so we go over, various different aspects of that law, how the suppliers have to report. And then those procurement officers are required at the end of the year, I believe, to file a report with Department of Audits and Accounts about how many E-Verifies they have processed during that fiscal year. So this session is a lot about, just potential problems that may come up, but then also just getting some resources and knowledge, how they can actually pull out information. Okay, so that's month 4. So Becky, we move into the 5th month.
Guess who's not muted?
Which is my favorite one. I should have switched with Becky.
Joyce, this is one of my favorite ones too. One of the things that I like about this one, and Joyce, you can tell me what your favorite thing about this one is, but I like that our commissioner presents or has presented part of this one. I think it shows the level of involvement and the level of engagement that we had from senior leadership and from other other agencies in the state. So the session that Joyce just described is a lot of outside agencies, and then this one as well. Our commissioner, who was formerly our legal counsel, so she has a law background, discussed ethics. We do cover the supplier protest process, contracts or litigation waiting to happen. I believe that's a course that our Attorney General's office provided. It's excellent. And then some best practices for technical scoring. So with the ethics, just to kind of give you an idea of what they cover, it's about things like, why is this important in state procurement? So as Joyce covered, the governor's proclamation from March of 2022, procurement handles billions of dollars in contract and procuring goods and services, and it's important that those are open and transparent and fair. And so it is important that we have ethical people in these positions. So just to kind of read, yeah, go ahead.
Can I add to that? And so we want them to take a look at or consider other points of view, right? How are their stakeholders? How are the users? How will suppliers see these things? And so we want them to just, kind of step outside of their role and then just think about how other people are going to see this. And so I always say that if you don't want to be on the news or you don't want your mom to be embarrassed, then conduct yourself in an ethical manner.
That's right. And one of the, I'm just going to read the bullet points because she says it better than I do. So one of the slides that our commissioner gives in this ethics discussion is that why is this important? State government buys things, of course. It involves billions of dollars of taxpayer dollars. Public procurement is one of the government activities most vulnerable to corruption, and it's important to the effective functioning of the state in ensuring public trust in government. Ethical behavior of government employees is fundamental to the legitimacy of democratic governments. I think that is a good summary of why this is important, and of her dedication to being sure that the laws and the policies and are effective, and that it runs how it's supposed to, and that this training program gives the right information that we need for our agencies to be able to practice and to manage. Joyce, you want to take over with the next session?
So our very last session, and which we're getting ready to actually have for the class that we're in right now, tomorrow and Friday will be their last session. And so in this session, we want to just make them aware of all of those statewide contracts that are out there, so we're looking at the span throughout the entire state of Georgia to develop those statewide contracts. And so just making them aware of how they can go out to the DOAS website and look for those contracts. And then we want to hear from them, what are some things that we currently don't have on contracts that we need to consider maybe putting either on a statewide mandatory contract or a statewide convenience contract. And then we have our data analytics team come in. And so these are the people that are crunching the numbers, right? So is it cost effective? Just looking at all the data when suppliers respond and they have to provide their costs, the data analytics team is there to assist them in analyzing the numbers, crunching the numbers. And then we bring in our staff members from our fleet that manage all the vehicles in the state of Georgia. And so we all know that there's an issue right now of trying to purchase a car. And so what can the fleet office help them with as far as managing their fleet of vehicles, or potentially helping them to look at some other options to purchase these vehicles that they need? And then our surplus group, I had the opportunity to sit in on a presentation with them earlier, or last year, Becky and I did. And you'd be surprised the amount of products and things that states actually surplus, and things that you can get at a very reasonable cost. So we don't always necessarily have to be looking to purchase new items. Are there some things that another state entity, maybe, they don't need an X-ray machine anymore, so they've surplus that and you do. So can you go buy that surplus item? So that's very good. And then also as part of this last session is our risk management. And so what type of bonds, what type of insurance do they need to have in place? How do they protect, state property and someone getting hurt on state property? And then finally, the auditors. And so we try to, in the state of Georgia, share with people that, the auditors are not there to, I got you, I'm catching you, but our auditors are there to help them and to, look at enterprise-wide, how they are conducting solicitations. Are they evaluating suppliers, giving them feedback every year? So our auditors are really acting as partners and not as a police to say, you didn't do this right, you didn't do that right. And so they really partner with us or throughout the enterprise just to provide information to our various different agencies. And then finally, Becky, you want to take the graduation ceremony or you want me?
I'll take it.
All right.
So at the end, we have a graduation ceremony. And so we do a couple of things. Our training group makes a little video and because we're virtual, right? And then it'll show them going across the stage and getting their certificate. Some of them are in person. And then we kind of do a summary and we allow them to give feedback. In fact, we don't just allow it, we ask for them to give feedback. When we designed this, we wanted it to be something that's going to update every year, not only with the relevant information for what's going on that year, but is there information that isn't being covered that should be covered? So we ask for their feedback for what should be covered in the next session. So I think the the last session with that graduation and is important to the next one. It's always important. We always get really good feedback on, okay, this worked and this didn't. When we originally were working on this, this was set up, we were going to pull everybody to Atlanta to come to these so that they could be in person and away from their workplaces, so they didn't get interrupted and they didn't have this going on. But guess what happened? COVID. Right? So you know what we did? We made it virtual and it actually works out better. Okay. And I think it's really good that that's one good thing that did come out of it, is that all these training sessions are now online and they're able to do these from where they're at. And sometimes I think it allows for more people to be able to participate. Real quick, Regina has a good question. She's asking if these are full days or half day sessions. So I will tell you, based on some of the feedback from that last session where we asked for that input, some of them prefer half day sessions. It is a lot of information. You guys just heard us expand on it and tell you what all that information is. Sometimes it's a lot for them to sit through for an entire day. There are some sessions based off of the speaker's availability and things like that have to be a full day, but a lot of times we'll split it up between 2 days, like session one, maybe 2 days. Yeah, there it is. It's 2 days. And then it could be a half day each day. Some of them that are a lot of in-depth information or there's a lot of discussion, maybe the full day, but we try to give enough breaks. Especially with it being virtual and not coming up to Atlanta. So they may be sitting either at home or in their offices, and they are getting those other things that are pulling their attention away and things like that. So it is difficult to sit through the entire day, and we try to be wary of that and be cognizant of that. And Joyce, you want to go on to the next one?
Yeah.
So this next question, I'm going to read John's question, and I think it kind of fits into this. It says, who are your speakers, former participants, and experienced CPOs? That's a good question. Okay, so Joyce was telling you earlier that we had, I believe it's 9 different regulatory agencies who were involved in this. Okay, so and by involved, we mean the speakers. So the speakers are the if it's the state accounting office, if it's the state purchasing division, whether it's our policy team, or whether it's our agency sourcing who helps the agencies do their individual procurements, or if it's our strategic sourcing who does our statewide contracts. But then there's some like the Office of Inspector General who presents, the Attorney General's office, our different divisions of DOAS, which is the state surplus, the auditors, things like that. So it's all of the different people from all the different agencies that would be over that, the subject matter experts in those different areas. And they all agreed to do this because they all agreed that in this role, you need to know those particular things. And they provide them with information, not just on, hey, in this moment or in this particular presentation, this is what you need, but it is when you go back to your office or back to your world, what do you need to know? How do you need to get there, right? This is my website. This is how to refer back to what you need in the future, right? And this is my contact information. This is how you get in touch with me. So we had several different speakers from several different agencies, depending on what the topic was. All right, so we had talked earlier that we would discuss how we came up with this curriculum and how we got to this. All right, and so this is it. And I think it's an appropriate time because we're talking about the veteran procurement officers. All right, so you may have asked yourself, why is the P-card manager and the training manager training people who are procurement managers? They haven't been procurement managers. You're absolutely right. Wait, hang on just a second. This is a good opportunity for the chat box. Put it in the chat if you thought that. I want to know. You're not going to admit it? Okay, so I'm going to tell you. All right. What we did is we were part of a leadership academy where they gave projects for us to choose from to participate in. And Joyce and I were assigned, we both volunteered, but we were assigned to this project, and we felt so strongly that this was a good project that we wanted to be part of it. Right. But I will tell you, across the board, everybody we spoke with was on board with it, and everybody had a hand in it and participated in this. So in fact, several of the people who are on this call were part of building it and who are part of running it now. So we had several different focus groups and study groups, and this is how you would apply it at your different agencies or at your different states. We started at the top. Do we have your buy-in? This is what we want to do. Are you good with us? Yes, they said. There is a need for it. Yes, let's go ahead and we're on board. Tell us what we can do to help. All right, so then we went to the experience, what you see on the screen, the veteran procurement officers. And we said, okay, y'all tell us, what is the curriculum that you want included in here? What is it that you would have wanted to know when you started your role that needs to be passed down to the next generation of procurement officers who are starting? Because as Joyce covered earlier, there is a high turnover rate. Right. So we want to be sure that we are transferring that information to the newest generations of procurement officers and being sure that that carries on. And so they gave us the topics. Every time we had the discussion, new topics were included. We talked earlier about, things like the IT system. So they want to know queries. Give us queries. Tell us queries. When they started their role, they wanted to know, what can I pull from the system that's going to tell me what to do? All right. And all of the different session topics, they all came from feedback that we got from the different groups. And then when we got to the subject matter experts and we met with them, we said, okay, these are the different asks for your topics. What do you want to include as well, so that we can be sure that your information's included, these suggested topics are included, and they all, hands down, they provided all of the information that was given, and they had the buy-in because they could see that the need for providing this information to new procurement officers. All right, Joyce, I'm ready when you are for the next slide.
Okay.
All right. So while states differ in their procurement authority and structure, all states' central procurement office must accomplish their duties through skilled staff at the central procurement office level, the state agency level when the procurement authority has been delegated, or a combination of both. So this is applicable to your state and to your agency, and you can replicate this process. So just start with those focus groups, start with those discussions, can we begin with this? What are the different things that y'all want to see included? Who's our subject matter experts, and can we ask them to come and speak on this? Or how can we get that topic covered for our procurement officers? Joyce, I'm ready when you are.
Yeah, so just to reiterate, Betty, you don't have to do all of this by yourself. Rely on those, relationships that you've built with other people. And so, it does sound like maybe it's a lot of work, but you have a lot of people that if you just ask, they're willing to help.
Very good. So what are some of the benefits? Because there has to be a benefit, right? You're not going to go through all this and do all of this work to set this up if there's not some kind of benefit. So we're going to talk about, well, there's some increased engagement with the supplier initiatives. For example, what we talked about earlier with the small business and the diversely owned businesses, increased transparency and compliance. Above all, I believe it helps that more than anything. Transparency and compliance, increased responsibility for sourcing. It allows us here at State Purchasing to be able to rely more on those agency procurement officers because they've been trained. They know the things they need to be looking for. They know the questions at least that they need to be asking, right? And then the increased leadership at the agency level. So increased efficiency and compliance. In FY21, 32 of the top procurement officers who had graduated were responsible for $2.6 billion in purchase orders and $17 million in P-card spend.
That's a lot of money.
Yes, it is. You want to be sure that those people are trained and know the laws and the policies and how to run those, right? As far as postings and competitive solicitations awarded with there was an estimated value of $128.7 million that included 419 consortiums and sole sources and 307 competitive solicitations.
So you can see why our governor was, willing to point out that we're responsible for a lot of taxpayer dollars in the state of Georgia. So
that's right. Decreased turnover, right? So the turnover rate among head procurement officers was 20% in FY21. So when we were doing analysis to see if we needed this, yeah, we were looking at the high rate of turnover. And we see it at the State Purchasing Division because the procurement officers have to be designated with us. We're constantly getting the designation forms and seeing those. And again, that was 20% in FY21. So of the 40 participants who had graduated from the boot camp, only one of them had left state employment. So while they may have moved to a head procurement officer at a different agency, at least they were still in the state, but only one had left state employment. That's very good. So as SHRM, right? I'm going to say that the right way. Do you guys know what SHRM is? So I believe it is the Human Resource Management group. I forgot what the S means. I'm sure somebody can tell me. But they calculate the cost of turnover to an organization to be 6 to 9 months of an employee's salary. So what is the savings when you add that up and you compare it to who participated in FY21? That was between $835,379 to $1.3 million. And in FY22, it was $796,114 up to $1.2 million.
So if you're considering this program and you have to, get buy-in from the top leadership or the executives, if you can give them, how much it is costing you every time somebody leaves a position and you have to start all over again. And so we thought that that was important just to show that, what effect will, this boot camp have on decreasing turnover. So that was important to us.
Osborne and Rebecca get a special shout out for letting us know that the S is Society of Human Resource Management. Thank y'all. Okay, so the training was offered for free for participants. All right. So the value of that is $20,655 in FY21 and $27,945 in FY22. So if you had gone, or if they had gone outside of the boot camp to get these different trainings, that's how much this would have been provided for. And we calculated that as it taking the 40.5 hours at $30 an hour, which is often what those training hours cost.
And so
So
you can probably imagine, because everything has gone up. Just imagine this is probably well over $30,000 now because the cost of everything has gone up. Right, Becky?
yes, that is right. Now, I think Regina is asking a very good question, and I will tell you because I know the answer to this one. And because he is my boss and he's the director of audits, he is the lucky one. And he did spend a lot of time doing that because he was supportive of this program and wanted to show that its value. And he did he did a lot of work to get all that information together. And I don't know if he's on here or not, but shout out to Gerald. Thank you for doing that because when you look at the numbers, it really catches your eye and it does show the value. And so good question, Regina. You knew that somebody had to be doing that, right?
Yeah, it wasn't Becky and I, because we try to stay in our lanes.
That's right. So for states facing the Great Resignation and increasing competition for talent, the Procurement Officer Bootcamp program empowers the Central Procurement Office to mentor and retrain existing talent through partnership with sister agencies and the veteran procurement officer community, delivering tangible service improvement and cost savings to the state. So speaking of which, so when it's talking about veteran procurement officers, they were all on board, and some of them really, really were. Yes, please sign us up. Let us do that. Let us tell them, and they will often join these sessions and they'll give their input. They'll say, oh, because we're here, we're at state purchasing, right? We're enterprise level. They're actually in the office running that themselves too. And they'll say, okay, these are the things, what they're telling you is right. And this is how to apply it. So they'll give that, and they like to be able to pass that on as well, because it would have helped them. And we like that mentorship and that partnership with them. And it gives them a contact as well to be able to reach out and ask questions. So speaking of asking questions, do you guys have any questions for us that you haven't already put in the chat or in the Q&A box?
Becky, I'm so proud of us. We are like right almost on time.
I know, right? Almost like there's lunch right after this.
Well,
So
thank you all. If there's no comments or questions on my behalf, thank you all for giving us the opportunity to just share a little bit about, some of the things that we're doing in the state of Georgia. Becky and I are here. If you have any comments or questions about how possibly you could get started, feel free to reach out to Becky and I. I speak for Becky as well. We've done this presentation a couple times. And so as you can tell, we like to have fun. And so hopefully you've gotten some good information. Becky?
We have just a couple real quick questions that I want to. So it's one of them is, are they required and is it conducted on an annual basis? So they are not required, but it is the agencies do, how can I say this? We do promote it, and it is a lot of information. We haven't had somebody who just said, no, I just don't want to do that. Right. So what we do is we reach out to the new procurement officers and then let them sign up for it. They have to agree to the different sessions and things like that. And then sometimes the agencies can say, hey, I really would like for this person to be able to participate. As far as
have a wait list for the next boot camp. So there's been some good feedback and publicity, and people are already saying, how can I get into the next one?
And is it conducted on an annual basis? It is. We are almost finished with our third cohort, and we'll start the next one. And I'm calling it cohort. It's the group that goes through the training. And then the next one will start again in the fall in August or September. Crystal, our contact information is on here. If you would like to reach out to Joyce, she can get you more information. And I think it's going to be based on what agency you're with. So reach out to Joyce directly on that. She's asking about how to take advantage of this in Georgia.
Okay.
I have one question. Because this is a virtual process, and I'm sure you hire throughout the year, have you all considered recording these sessions so that the new people can kind of catch up, or do you just wait until the next year for them to start?
We let them start and then, oh, Joyce, go ahead. I'm sorry.
So my job is supposed to be to record the sessions. A lot of times I forget to hit the record button, but if someone misses a session, we do try to make that available. So somebody that's in the current class, if they miss a session, they can go back and watch that recording. But I think that's what Becky was getting ready to say. If somebody comes in after the boot camp has started and we're in the process, they have to just wait till the next class starts.
Joyce, do you have a max that you allow in the classes?
The class that we have this currently right now, we have 28 students, which is the biggest that we have. We tried to cap it off at 25, but we did make some exceptions for the current class. So this class, we have 28 students in the class.
Very good.
All right. Well, thank you all so much. That concludes today's presentation. And I want to thank you, our presenters, Joyce Auld and Becky Alexander, for the valuable information that you shared today and for working with us here at NASPO to bring it to you. Thank you all for attending this webinar today. You will all receive a follow-up email containing today's slides and materials. Remember that this webinar qualifies as one contact hour for your continuing education credits. To receive your certificate, simply fill out the survey in your browser window once you've exited the webinar. This webinar has been recorded and will be available for viewing on the NASPO YouTube page in the coming days. Questions entered into the chat and Q&A boxes have been saved, and we will try to follow up by email for anyone's not addressed during the presentation. Don't forget to check out the upcoming webinars and other events at NASPO.org. And thanks again to our wonderful presenters, and thank you to our guests. Have a great day.
Thank you. Have a great day.
Thank you, guys.
Bye-bye.
Bye.